Thank you, Professor Thimiou. Basically, I just wanted to make a very brief introduction to this session. I would like to thank Professor Thimiou for arranging the organization of this Pantera session here at the conference. And I am sure that it will be very interesting and informative for all of us to attend. Hopefully, the participants are going to increase as well. And Professor Thimiou, you may continue the session. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We can continue, of course, and I would like to welcome everybody this afternoon in this plenary session where the Pantera project and the consortium related to it, we have this afternoon to discuss many issues that are of interest to you. I would like to just open the session. Let me see why it's not progressing. Okay. Let me decrease this. Okay. We have this session is related to the Pantera, as we said, Coordination, Support and Action Horizon 2020 project. It is a project that is under the auspices of DG Energy, and it is aimed to support the energy transition. We have, through this project, many things that we would like to share with you and discuss with you and build together the objectives forward. But just as introductory, the workshop will cover different aspects that the energy transition needs to address in order to contribute to the energy targets of EU as an efficient way as possible. And in this workshop, we will cover smart grids regional evolution with the active contribution of the project Supera that is in support of the said plan. We have also, we are hosting also the results of the project Navig and Sueco, who are going to present us with the results achieved. And also we have tomorrow, we are going to present the results of the Interplan project as well, as indication of what research and innovation can achieve in Europe, provided that we do it effectively and in a targeted way. So we would also spend quite a bit of time presenting and also discussing what we have planned through the Pantera project, the ERI platform, as we call it, that we are going to hear a few things about it and how this can help us in the research and innovation work in Europe, and especially we would like to target the low activity countries, which includes Cyprus and 15 other countries in Europe that have been classified in comparison with the other countries as low activity countries in research and innovation in support of the energy transition. And so this is our agenda forward for this two-day event, shall we say, is this afternoon, all afternoon, and tomorrow morning until lunchtime. And we have this agenda that is enriched with the presentation of our project officer, Mario Dionisiou, who is going to be with us, the project, as we said, Navigant, and the presentation of results. And we have within the round, this workshop, 3 round tables that we have guests to discuss many interesting themes that will be looking forward to them and see what we can learn from them. So we have 3 round tables today and tomorrow, and we will conclude with the outcomes of these discussions. So we have a rich afternoon and tomorrow morning together, and let's at the end see to what degree we have managed to pass on to you the rich outcomes of the Pantera project and the rest that are invited and supporting our work here. So what is the Pantera project? The Pantera project, as we said, is a coordination and support action. It's supported by 9 partners that you see their names here. We are coordinating this this coordination and support action, and we, as FOSS, making sure that all is running as planned and meeting all the requirements. We know very well that Europe is well in support of the Paris Agreement and what is aiming through that. And in order to achieve this, and the reason we are underlying this is because without concentrated effort and targeted effort and well organized in order to make sure that every euro spent is going in the correct direction, we cannot achieve it unless we see research and innovation in well-targeted fields that will take us there. And that is why we are giving a lot of importance as to what are the activities of member states, of the research and innovation family in Europe in order to achieve this, but always in a coordinated way. So the international world is reporting that we have to achieve this Paris Agreement, and not only 2 degrees, but we should stay within the 1.5 degree centigrade rise of temperature, which is something that we know very well that if we don't do excessive effort, we cannot achieve it. And so the intention here for Europe is to be able to reach these targets by 2050 and reach it with 0 emissions in the electricity sector, something that is crucially important for the whole economy of Europe. So the EU, with this vision, can inform others how we can deliver collectively a clean planet. And that's where the Green Deal has come up in order to strengthen this process and support the whole vision forward. So the long-term strategy shows transforming our economy is possible and is going to be highly beneficial for everybody. So the targets are set. It's a question of us really meeting these targets. And these targets for 2030, there is a strong debate in Europe for going further up, and the target of 55 degrees lowering down the greenhouse gas emissions is something that is highly discussed and probably come up with revised targets. And there is a strong discussion in that possibly by 2023, we will have revised targets for these figures that we are seeing in front of us, which are already very demanding on us. So sustainable energy for all Europeans is something that the clean energy is calling for everybody to support and go forward. And in this process, we know that Europe is trying utmost to achieve this. And it's a question of, is everybody contributing? How are we going to take every European? This is what it's saying for all Europeans. How are we not going to leave anyone behind? And that is why the Pantera project came along in order to support the process. We are here to find ways of helping these 15 countries, these 16 countries. Recently, we had added to this Portugal. We would like to support all the countries to move forward and pick up best practices from the rest of the countries and raise their activities in research and innovation in order to achieve the highly beneficial targets set out. So the project's main goal is to bridge the gaps in research and innovation in energy field that exist between EU member states and really take everybody with us. Its mission is to become the single point of reference for smart grids in the EU, and it will say a lot of things about this because this is what we are trying through the ERI platform. So the countries that we are talking about is what you see here. What is deep blue here are the countries that are showing low activity in research and innovation. Portugal is not shown, but is in the list of the countries that we are targeting. So how are we going to do it? Why Pantera? What is the objective and where we want to go? We said that we would like to generate an interactive multifunctional platform through which we will have a voice, through which we will have data, information, knowledge, sharing and learning from it and building on it and expanding on it. So we would like through this ERI platform to be able to generate the required tools, the required features, the required digital repository through which we can have access to all that we require in order to help our research and innovation activities flourish. So how are we going to do this? I know it's easily said, but difficult to be done. But we are already doing a very good progress in that direction. And this is what we would like to share with you today and discuss it and see the benefits of it. So we have put out an iBird view of what is the Pantera process we have built and how we would like this Pantera process really help us in this direction. So in order to achieve this, as we said, we are going to build the ERI platform that is going to link all data, information and knowledge that currently exists in Europe, in member states or in associations and other activities within Europe, including the Commission, to be able to be accessible through the front end of the ERI platform that is going to be hosted on the servers of JRC, which is the Joint Research Company of Europe, the joint research that Europe is assisting, and currently JRC CETIS is the area where results coming from the EU do appear for anybody who would like to contact and see. And we will be working closely with Joint Research Center, the center that is considered to be the research arm of the Commission. They will be hosting ERI, and they will be supporting all the activities that we will be doing, and they will be the ones that will offer sustainability future for the work that we will produce through this project. And not only that, is that as we will say a few times today, the ERI platform is going to be the European Interconnection for Research, Innovation and Entrepreneurship. This is the name given by DG Energy, and they will be supporting what we will produce through this project through service contracts. They will be supporting its future in order to continue delivering to the research and innovation community of Europe. We are already contacting other platforms in Europe. We have discussed extensively with ETIPSNet and Bridge. We have discussed with the Mission Innovation, and we are already in agreement of how this will be operating. And we have on the road to discuss with DERLAB, with JRC more extensively, with IRANET, the Xpera platform that probably you know a lot about it, and others will follow. In other words, try to find a link towards the rest of research and innovation community of Europe, and trying to link everything so that we can have access to all data, information, and knowledge through this single platform. So we would like to filter what is coming through that, and we would like to enrich it through constant feed-in of results and outcomes. And how are we going to do that? We have put together a process. This is what we call the Pantera process. And this process takes everybody on board, including stakeholders, including active associations, and including all the knowledge that is brought together in Europe on these issues. And we have put as input also the national energy and climate plans that are being produced by all the member states, together with the set plan and what the set plan is putting forward as a process in order to affect how we build this research and innovation forward. And we are in constant dialogue with the stakeholders. We will be in constant interaction with them, in consultation with them, and also receiving the constant support of experts in building the tools, the solutions that we would like to enrich this platform to serve the research and innovation community in Europe. So we have put together as a consortium these design principles that you see in front of you that address both the data area, the information area, and the knowledge area, and how we can build this in a coordinated, in a way that can be universally approached and be communicated with the rest of the platforms and be in a way that we don't lose any of data, information, and knowledge that is generated. And in order to do that, we have put together an architecture that we consider to be state-of-the-art in bringing all these solutions together and joining all these sources of information, data, and knowledge, and trying to get this through open APIs that can be of real service to everybody. So we will have this platform being with this architecture, and we will have constant feeding of data, information, knowledge, and other services that we consider appropriate and useful to research and innovation community. So within this platform, we will have an area where we will handle data, an area where we will store it and manage it and develop the appropriate reports in order to do what is expected. And also in there, we will have applications, tools, and way of evaluating this data and making it useful to the research and innovation community. And of course, we will have this being supported by a service that will give this support constantly to research and innovation community and have it accessible and approachable by everybody. So this approach we have put together, trying to put the ideas that will give us the result that we would like to see, and being hosted, as we said, on the servers of JRC within Europa, and hence fully aligned and fully in line with the requirements of the Commission. And that is why it's fully supported by the Commission in giving back to the research and innovation community of Europe the means to develop and enrich their activity. So this, as I have already mentioned, is the Pantera recap process. It is the process that we would like to see taking everything into consideration and putting it in a methodological way to reach results and give output. And it is a bottom-up and top-down approach that is enriching this process. And to assist this, we are in constant cooperation with stakeholders. We are having reference the 10-year plan of ETIPSnet, which is putting ahead to us the strategy that will take us to the 2030-2050 objectives for the energy transition. And we are building what we call the regional desk area, where the Pantera 6+1 is addressing all these 16 countries in a coordinated way, so that we can build the strength, or can build on the strengths of the regions in helping them to identify their real needs that are based on the country needs, and how this can be extrapolated to be reached onto the platform, and from the platform towards the European policy decision makers. So this is the process that we are putting forward, and it has also a technical process through which we will help the process to deliver results. And we have put this process into perspective, and how these can receive input, how we can enter into loops for optimization and generation of results in order to reach a mature level of being enriched information, data, or knowledge that can go onto the Pantera platform and being accessible by the research and innovation community in Europe. So this process is in progress. As we have gone through this, now we are in the 20th month of the project. And from day one, we have put together our objective of developing the concept, of detailing specifications, and tendering out to find a good contractor that can help us to develop this platform. And now we have managed to find a very good contractor, Bilbomatica, who is with us and working with us, and is already achieved quite a bit. And this is the state where currently the design, all that I have described before, this has been transformed into a data model that you see in front of you. And this is part of our current discussions with Bilbomatica in order to conclude, refine, agree on a number of refinements, and move to the next phase, which is the development phase, expecting to have everything operational by March 2021. So in between, of course, we as Pantera platform, as consortium, we are working together with ETIPSnet experts to develop tools, to develop means and ways of enriching this platform that will help to bring a better environment for research and innovation community to work and find what they expect to find in support of their work. So we have developed quite a bit the work forward, and we have at the moment the initial mock-up for the home page, which what you see here is not final, but it is what you probably will see soon. Let's say by December, we have tried to push things forward, and we expect the first launching of the platform that is going not to be complete, but it's going to be the first, let's say, the more easier areas of the platform that will be delivered. This will be a Christmas present. We expect that to be just before Christmas. So we have also put together the mock-up for the research tool, because we have advanced research capabilities embedded into the platform, because we would like to make the life easier to the user and to be attractive and to be interesting and useful to the research and innovation community of Europe. So the ERI platform is with us. We will start soon to present this through our webpage and give more information about it. We would like you to meet the ERI and the new Pantera platform that I have described now. You will start seeing this in tweets, in our webpage, and seeing more and more of it as we develop it. So within the Pantera project, we have been hard to work on developing an interactive multifunctional platform that will act as the meeting point of all actors active in the field of energy research and innovation from all Europe. We have been in close collaboration with the European Commission and important stakeholders such as JRC and ETIPSNet and IRANET SES, Smart Energy Systems, and to make ERI a true success. We would like you all to stay tuned, because we are sure that you will hear more and that you will be happy with what you will receive in the end and see in the end. Well, this is what I wanted to say as an introductory to the workshop of today and tomorrow. And thank you very much for listening. I don't know if you have any questions, burning questions at the moment. Let's see. Do we have any questions? No, we don't have any questions. So I think we can proceed further. Let's see, we have 36 participants. And do we have Mario?
Mario has yet to join. We've sent him an email. We don't have any other communication with him, unfortunately. We're waiting for him a bit.
Okay. Yes, we were expecting Mario, Mario Dionisio, our project officer, to deliver his speech at the moment. And so we have to move on. And let's hope, probably is this time difference, and I don't know what's happening with the time difference. Of course, he didn't mention anything to me that he has any difficulties with that. Okay, so what shall we do? If we move on to the
Professor Efthymiou, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a comment in the chat from Mr. Batasidis. It says if you can say a few words about data security and personal data, how they will be treated.
Yeah, we will definitely follow strict rules of the Commission on that. We are already discussing it in detail. We will take every precaution so that everything that will go onto this platform, it will be anonymized. It will not lead to any violation of European, let's say, rules or guidance rules and whatever. But we will transform it into usable and useful information for others to use. Now, how are we going to do that? I totally agree with you, George. It's not an easy thing, but we will try it. So, is Isabel with us?
Yes, good afternoon. We are the whole team.
All the team available? Do you think you can start your presentations now and allow Mario to present his after you?
That sounds very good. And I also wanted to suggest I might share my screen so that we can go through the slides.
Yeah, Of course, of course. So pick up the screen and move on with your presentations. And I would like to just welcome the team. I don't know what you call yourselves. Is that under Guidehouse or is it just Navigant project? You will say a few more words on that. Please, Isabella, to introduce your teams and make sure that you give us all the information around it. We have said that it is a project that is going to give the results of the outcome of the project. And so, Isabella, please, the floor is yours, and you can describe and say and update us where is the status and what is the situation with this project. Thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It is really interesting, and it really nicely supports the work that we have been doing for the European Commission on the study on the offshore grid potential in the Mediterranean region. Just double checking, I hope you can see my screen already.
Yes, can you please put it on full screen mode?
I thought I did. Can I do that?
Yeah, currently is not in full screen, so.
Okay, maybe let me stop sharing and I start.
Now it seems that you are coming to full screen. Let's see what you will achieve with that.
Let me know when you can see the full screen, otherwise we try to fix it.
Okay. For the moment, we are still seeing your face.
Okay, and it means that I stopped sharing. So let me start sharing from the beginning, and let me try to share my screen again. How about now?
Looks good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, again, we'd like to thank you for hosting us, showing the results of the study that we have just finished for the European Commission on the potential of offshore grid, of offshore energy and offshore grid in the Mediterranean region. We have nearly the complete team with us right now. So we have Frank Cronert and Simon Lindlorth, sorry for from spelling, from Sweco. Myself, Iza Kielichowska from Guidehouse. We will also have Dr. Konstantin Stasius joining us in a bit. He's still chairing the SIGRA global event meeting, so he'll join us in a couple of minutes. And apology for his being late, but he will definitely contribute to the discussion. With this, we wanted to show you a summary of the study results, and maybe I can start with saying that we did this work even though none of us is really from the region. We tried to be reaching out to regional stakeholders as much as possible, which included the permanent representations of the national member states, the TSOs in the region, and various organizations representing the industry, like the renewable energy industry and the grid industries, to make sure that we can actually deliver something that will be useful to the people of the region. The study we have actually finalized the report sent to the Commission right now. Quite a lot of the results is being used for the offshore renewable energy strategy that is being drafted and hopefully is going to be published in the next 2 weeks or so. And we can I put the slides? And yes, and we'd like to guide you through the study, and also hope for the discussion, open questions, but also suggestions from your side, how the next steps could be seen and what else could be done. Just to double check on the technical side, can you see the table of content right now?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. I'm never certain with these things, that's why I was asking. So the table of content is really presenting the scope of the study. So we first looked at the potential of offshore energy generation, and offshore meant mainly offshore wind, both bottom fixed and floating wind, wave and tidal, but also it meant onshore wind and onshore PV in islands in the region. And this is because the region is rich with islands, and actually the Mediterranean region has 75% of the EU islands in general. Having understood the potential, we looked at the most attractive areas, which we called technology mix areas. This does not mean that we have fully covered a interesting topic, but we picked the most interesting one from the high-level strategic perspective, and we tried to understand how the energy generation could develop in these regions, how that would impact the CO2 emissions in the countries of the region, and how to design the grid to optimally connect the potential offshore energy installations to the shore in the countries of the region. We also tried to understand what is the economic and socio-economic impact of these developments, what are key barriers, and what are the potential measures to address these barriers. So when it comes to the potential, as I already mentioned, we looked at, in principle, 3 major sources of energy, or 4 if you like: offshore wind, both floating and bottom fixed, wave and tidal, which is a relatively new technology, but it's quite promising, but also solar PV and onshore wind in islands. We looked only at EU member states. That was the request from the Commission, but we have pretty soon found out that, that one of the recommendations is really to look broader and include Eastern Balkans, include Turkey, and include the north of Africa into the further analysis, if there is further analysis being planned or will take place. When it comes to current capacity targets and projects, the offshore energy in the Mediterranean region is perhaps a little bit behind the North Sea. It's pretty modest. There is quite some developments in Portugal, but it's more on the Atlantic Sea. And there are some examples of wave and tidal, Portugal, Greece, but also in Italy. Of course, solar PV and onshore wind are much more common in the region, but still, given the energy landscape of islands, we believe that there is much more potential to be tackled. We also looked at national energy climate plans to understand what are the targets for 2030 and whenever possible for 2040 as well. And as you can see, the region is a bit cautious with offshore energy, mainly because the sea is very deep and it's also very busy with a lot of different economic activities. So it would be a combination of finding the right spots for offshore energy generation, but also considering more floating offshore wind rather than fixed bottom, which is getting closer to the market pricing. Next, when we understood the landscape, we tried to understand what the actual potential is. So we looked at wind speed, we looked at the depth of the sea, we looked at the wave potential, and obviously we looked at the solar potential in the region. We also tried to limit, so exclude the areas that are not fit for development of offshore energy. So first of all, we focus only on national economic zones. We excluded all the conservation areas. We excluded areas deeper than, I believe, 100 meters. We also excluded areas closer to shore than 12 nautical miles to avoid the visual impact of wind power. And we also considered what are the major fishing areas, the major transportation routes, and the known military bases. Of course, in the latter, the analysis on this level is not complete because, as you can imagine, this information is top secret. So this is only an approximation. Once we took all those layers one on another, we understood what is the technical potential, but also what is the economic potential. So we looked at anticipated CapEx and OpEx costs for all the technologies that I mentioned, offshore, bottom fixed, or wind, offshore floating, wave and tidal, but also PV and onshore wind in islands and offshore. And we tried to understand which are the most attractive areas for further analysis and for further developments. As you can see in these maps, it seems that there is a rather limited bottom fixed potential, fixed offshore wind potential because of the depth of the sea. In principle, we spotted it mainly in the Gulf of Venice. There is a lot of wave energy potential in the region, not as much as in the North Sea or in the Atlantic, but there is some. However, these technologies are not quite yet so mature, so they would come later in the pipeline when it comes to economic market developments of renewable energies. And finally, floating wind seems there is a lot of potential. Yes, it is also a new technology, but if you look at the map of the region, in principle, most of the shores can be potentially interesting for development of offshore floating winds in the years to come, not today, but 2040, 2050, yes. And it's really difficult even to mention one specific country where there is more potential than others, because this offshore wind, offshore floating wind potential is spotted in every country of the region. So based on this analysis that we showed you briefly in the maps, we picked 10 areas where we think there will be most attractive economic renewable energy potential, and that could trigger further analysis. We also tried to distribute it across the region and make sure that these are the hottest spots of all the countries. So, so as you can see, we have one on the border between Spain and Portugal. We have one in the Gulf de Bordeaux. We have one close to Corsica, one's in between Sicily and Malta, one in Malta, one in the Gulf of Venice, which I mentioned because that's a special bottom fixed wind potential, which is rather unique for the region. We have another one between Italy and the Balkans, and we have two really interesting opportunities in the Greek waters. Again, this is not the complete potential. This is only the top 10 areas which we have identified, and we believe there is much more potential elsewhere. Nevertheless, to be able to progress with some initial examples, what can be done in the region, we decided to focus on these 10 technology mix areas and develop the generation scenarios, power generation scenarios for them. And with that, I will give the floor to Frank.
Thank you, Isa. And the reason for developing a complete production scenarios for not only the Mediterranean countries, incorporating the economic potential of those 10 technology mix areas, but also of the rest of Europe, is simply that we want to have a look at what would the power market impact actually be of two different scenarios. A scenario which we call the NECP scenario, so the National Energy and Climate Plan scenario, going through 2030 towards 2050, and one scenario that is even more ambitious than the National Energy and Climate Plans would be. Both scenarios share essentially the same demand. They share essentially the same assumptions in terms of production capacity, kind of any fossil production which is phasing out, any other political targets coming in. The only way they differ are in the way they make use of the offshore energy potential identified in those 10 technology mix areas that we have shown you. So 2030, 2050, two scenarios, 2030. One NECP scenario and one more ambitious scenario. Then you look at the next slide and push one more, you will see that if you look at the ambitious scenario, When we look at the technology mix areas and the most economic offshore energy potential, that is found to be within offshore wind, partly bottom fixed, but somehow surprising, even on the floating offshore wind side. So if you look at the installed capacity in our scenarios across the Mediterranean countries towards 2030 and 2050, it is for all Mediterranean countries 22,300 in terms of offshore wind. However, 13,300 of those are in the Mediterranean part of the Mediterranean countries, important to note. While we in 2050 are reaching almost 95,000 megawatts, of which 75% are in the Mediterranean part of the Mediterranean countries. If you look at wave and tidal, it's actually minor volumes, simply because the way we choose to construct the production scenarios is strictly production cost related. So the lowest production cost would come first. If we look a bit ahead and look at actually where we see in our scenarios, where we see developments and bigger installations within those 10 technology mix areas, you see to the left-hand side in the NECP scenario 2030, substantial installation of floating offshore wind in the Gulf de Lyon and bottom fixed offshore wind south west of Sicily, and also in the Gulf of Venice. If you look at the ambitious scenario in the same year, that is 2030, you see even more installed capacity in those three regions, and you see also some project in Greece. And if you look at the 2050 scenario, which is on the next page, you see that we make use of almost all the technology mix areas, ranging from the Gulf of Cadiz, obviously over Gulf de Lyon, which is strongly built out, Sicily, around Corsica, all areas basically. And in the ambitious scenario, we even increase the volumes there. So from the production scenario point of view, we both look 30 years ahead, and we look at quite a differentiation in terms of the volumes of offshore wind energy we take into account. If you look at the next slide. Of course, in a sense, you need to test that any of these scenarios that you construct also provides you with a result in terms of the renewable share that is targeted within the NECPs, and since they only look until 2030, we have shown them in a bar per country, and essentially all of the scenarios, whether that is what we call the NECP scenario or the ambitious scenario, they all at least match the renewable energy share within the respective country, at least how we can define that. And the ambitious scenario obviously increases that even more. You go to the next. One of the main things obviously is that you would like to compare the production cost that we derived in the first step within each of the technology mix areas and the areas that we actually choose to use in our modeling. And if you look at the left-hand side, the 2030 NECP scenario, where you saw that we use installations in the Gulf de Lyon, we use the Gulf of Venice, and we use constructions in around Sicily. You will see that the cost are corresponding to the height of the bar, and the line is corresponding to the power price that you can receive from the market. The orange one is the one that you receive from the market within the bidding zone, and the dotted one is actually the captured price for that technology, which means that if you compare this production cost, which is calculated without external grid connection cost, you can at least have a kind of qualitative assessment of whether the technology could be installed on its own merits without any support, which would probably be the case here around Sicily, since the production cost is substantially lower than the price you could get. Well, in some of the other areas, you see that, okay, production cost is slightly higher than power prices, so you would need some kind of support, at least for the installations that have to be installed until 2030. All right, if you look at the next slide, obviously we tested also if there is an impact on CO2 emissions. That somehow comes by default because it is implicit if you increase more offshore wind or any renewable energy and everything keep everything else constant, you push out some of the fossil fuel thermal generation out of the merit order. Obviously that leads to decreased costs. This is just to prove that the reference that we set for 2020 and the results for 2030, which are the two left green ones, lead to substantial reductions of CO2 emissions in all countries, while the 2050 scenario, post 2050 scenarios lead to additional reductions, and even between the NECP and the ambitious scenario, there's a substantial decrease in CO2 emissions in some countries. And last but not least, I think this is just to prove that there is an additional gain by the more ambitious scenario as opposed to the what we call the NECP scenario. And with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague Simon Lindroth to talk you through the grid options we have been looking at.
So, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So, in order to handle all these different technology mix areas and the numerous different production scenarios, we devised a method of sorts to design on a fairly overview level different options for connection to the grid in the respective countries of each technology mix areas. And we did that in a semi-automated process where we started with looking at the most simple way of connecting each technology mix area to shore by using a radial connection, which is the leftmost image in this slide, where we basically draw a cable on a straight path to the nearest station on shore. In order to take an additional step into making this a little bit more optimized, we then considered a hub connection, which is what we called when we grouped a number of production blocks together, creating a bigger link to shore, utilizing the same link for several production sites, with the benefit of that being more optimized, but with the con of it being a little bit more sensitive to failure, since several production sites share a common link. And as a third step, we did manually some study of, for each technology mix areas, are there other ways of doing this? For instance, can we, which is being showed in the example to the rightmost in this slide, can we make a connection that creates a link between two countries, so that we have a meshed system that connects not only to one site, thereby perhaps using that link as a cross-country connector as well. So those were the three steps that we studied and when looking at the possible grid connection options. And you can move on to the next slide. These are some of the results, and the details are not of importance perhaps here. I just wanted to show you a brief overview of the different technology mix areas we have. And as I said, the lines become pretty thin here, but from left to right in the upper part, it's the Gulf de Lyon, the border of Spain and France, and then the technology mix area outside of Malta. Next to that one is the boot of Italy, so the Ionian Sea, connecting to the Italian boot. After that, it's the North Aegean Sea of the Greek islands and the South Aegean Sea. And on the lower row, there's the technology mix area outside of Corsica and Sardinia, followed by the technology mix area of Sicily. The Gulf of Cadiz on the border of Portugal and France, and finally on the lower row to the right, the Gulf of Venice, with the connections both to Italy and to Croatia. And the next slide then shows a couple of these, as I mentioned, optional grid connections where we qualitatively studied some other ways of doing this apart from the radial connection. And for Malta, that optional grid connection that was studied was, instead of going straight to the transmission grid of the Sicilian grid, instead connecting straight to Malta, utilizing the 220 kilovolt station that exists there. In the middle is the Gulf of Venice, where we have production going into shore both in Italy and in Croatia, which led to the possibility of creating a cross-country link, as I mentioned before, where we added an additional cable in red between the production zones connecting to Italy and the ones connecting to Croatia, so that there was created a cross-country connection there. And finally, in the Golfe de Lion, similar option was studied, where we added an additional link in red connecting some production blocks that are feeding power into France, with some production blocks feeding power into Spain, and thereby creating an additional link there. So those were the three options studied that were not connected simply to the nearest station on shore. And the next slide. In addition to this, we made also on a broad level a study of how these 10 technology mix areas, how they relate to some other planned projects in the region, and a highlighting of some possible benefits in the realization of them. And this is the technology mix areas with the blue dots scattered across the Mediterranean. And on this map also overlaid the ENTSO-E 10-year network development plan map. So the lines going across in different colors across the Mediterranean are some of the projects being planned or being envisaged in the region. And going from east to west, there are a couple of projects being planned for the South Aegean Sea, connecting, for instance, Crete to mainland Greece. And since there is a technology mix area in that region, there could be some possibilities for benefits in coordinating those two projects. Moving more to the west, we have outside of Sicily also a planned project connecting Tunisia to Sicily. And further on from Tunisia, there's a planned project going north up to passing Sardinia and to mainland Italy, which also crosses one of the sites for our technology mix areas. And all the way to the west, the fourth orange circle, south of Spain and Portugal, there have been at least conversations about connecting Portugal to Morocco through subsea cables, which also then crosses the technology mix area of that region. So those four orange circles represent spots where there could be some benefits of coordination, although we have not studied the details of any of those. The two blue circles indicate spots where our technology mix areas come close to or are affected by other transmission grid strengthening projects in the respective countries. For the one south of France, and that technology mix area, the flow in that region may be affected by the strengthening of the grid in the western part of the Pyrenees, going from Spain to France. So that may have some impact on the flows in that region, although they're not really all that close, but they may impact each other anyways. And finally, for the blue circle north of Italy, that technology mix area will feed in power to the north of Italy, which will be affected likely by the planned grid strengthening project inside Italy, which is due south of that region. So that's another area where the feeding of power into the country will be affected by future projects in the country. So you can move to the next slide. We made a very brief overview also of looking at these 10 technology mix areas and looking at the scenarios, such as Frank described them, about how much power will be fed into each site. We made just a very brief major or minor impact analysis of each country based on a qualitative level, where we concluded that for the 2030 NECP scenario, that is the less ambitious of the two scenarios for 2030, we think that the injection into northern of Italy may counteract some of the flows through Italy going from north to south. So that could be envisaged as being only a minor impact. Same is true towards a minor impact in the south of France, where the injection of 1.4 gigawatt is within the realm of what is being planned for, or what is being foreseen, at least for that region of France. Whereas the injection into Sicily, although it's only 0.6 gigawatts, which is small in comparison to one of the other injections at least, will likely likely need some major grid reinforcements to be possible, since the power flow from Sicily north is associated with some known bottlenecks, especially across from Sicily to the mainland Italy. And the same exercise for 2030 with a more ambitious scenario. Then we have more red spots and some green as well, where since the power injections increase in that scenario, then also the impact on the grids is deemed to be likely larger. So we've only considered that possibly minor grid reinforcements for Spain, Croatia, and Greece, since for the first two of those I mentioned, the injections are quite small. For Greece, it's larger, but it goes into a region with a heavy load center of the Athens region. So that may alleviate some of the flow from the northwest of Greece. So I think that was perhaps the final slide of my part of this. Yes, thank you. So I will leave the word back to Frank. Your mic is still muted there.
And obviously, we looked at the socioeconomic benefits of some of these solutions, and we applied the traditional cost-benefit approach, basically looking at different costs and the welfare economic impacts of them. So we looked at the CapEx and OpEx costs, differences between the different scenarios, both for the generation side, and the generation side only differs, as I explained, by the amount of offshore energy production we introduced. And then we looked at the socioeconomic welfare impacts, which are producer, consumer surplus, and congestion rent. Obviously, you can look also into the saving of CO2 emissions, which I showed you before, and you can look into some more benefit indicators. But for this analysis, I will show you the results of the socioeconomic welfare impact analysis on the next slide. And this slide probably needs some more explanation, since on what you see on the left-hand axis is actually the investments that are required, and on the right-hand side you see the capacity in megawatt of offshore that we see being integrated in the Mediterranean countries in our scenarios. So meaning that in the 2030 scenario, where we have both an option with an NECP scenario and an ambitious scenario, within the NECP scenario, we looked at both the radio connection and the hub connection version, and we did the same for the ambitious scenario: radio connection, RC, ambitious connection, HC, and then we looked at two options, as Simon explained, where we actually introduced an additional interconnector connecting two countries, which for this scenario, which is PMA1, technology mix area 1, is connecting Spain and France, and this option would connect Italy and Croatia. And on the left-hand side, you see actually the resulting CapEx costs from it. So introducing these about 13,000 megawatts of offshore wind, which basically is, and disregarding the onshore grid reinforcement costs, you would land up at costs depending on which grid connection scenario you choose, between 25 and 30 billion euro. And if you transport that into the year 2050, the accumulated investment, so it's not the investment in 2050, it's the accumulated investments over the time period 2020 to 2030 to reach the NECP kind of scenario would be around 50 to 58 billion euro, and the capex cost for the ambitious scenario would be on the order of 120 to 130 billion. And now often you can't really compare how much is that, but we just made an analysis for Sweden and the whole power system between 2020 and 2050. And if you include all the costs of all the production sources, both reinvestments and new investments and grid at all levels, it's about the same level. So you can argue it's a lot, it's little, depends on what you relate it to. So the costs for integrating this high amount would be around 220 to 130 billion. If we go to the next slide, we looked a bit into the change in socioeconomic welfare, and just looking at the producer surplus changes, the change in consumer surplus, and the change in congestion rent. It also enables us to have some check, let's say a feasibility check on whether an interconnector between two countries would be feasible, although that is a high level analysis, obviously. So what we see in all of those scenarios, which is also kind of implicit, more renewables as compared to the base case, which is the NECP case, obviously push down power prices. So what it always does, it decreases producer surplus, it increases consumer surplus, it changes congestion rent. And when you see the dot, as long as the dot is, which is a total, as long as the dot is above 0, these scenarios are preferable over the base scenario. And all of the ambitious scenarios in that sense are preferable over the base scenario. However, that is implicit, as I said, since you introduce more renewables and you disregard some of the costs. What is interesting in that sense is, are these interconnectors that I mentioned before between Spain and France, or between Italy and Croatia, do they make a difference? And of course, choosing it at this scale and for all the Mediterranean countries and the other European countries in connection, you don't see a difference. But there is a difference, obviously. If you look just at the two connected countries, and in that sense, if you look at Spain and France, at least in that kind of analysis, you see an increased consumer surplus. Overall, you see a decreased producer surplus, but those two are offset by an increase in congestion rent. So looking at those aspects, you would end up the recommendation that's something you should look at. If you apply the same to the Croatia-Italy interconnector, that with the same measures doesn't make so much sense. If you look into the year 2050, same thing here. Overall, all the ambitious scenarios show a higher change in socioeconomic welfare, implicit again, and the interconnector between France and Spain, representing the totals here as a dot, is slightly higher than the other one. So that is kind of an indication of that is something to look into, although we obviously be aware of that. This is a high-level analysis. It's not a detailed planning into all to seabed and all of that. With that, I hand back to you, Isabella, or maybe look at the CO2 emission savings. Obviously, that those exist as well in scenarios, and we have, and that's what this slide actually says. You do not only have the CO2 emission savings in the Mediterranean countries where you install the production capacity, You also have them, and that's the black part of these graphs, in the other countries in Europe due to the interconnection of the power system and how the power market works. So installing more RES, and especially installing these amount of RES, also decreases CO2. Isabella.
Thank you, Frank. So let's move to the next part. We spent quite some effort on trying to identify what are the key policy and regulatory barriers. I've mentioned here only the 4 major categories. All of the categories, I think we have 10 categories of barriers.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Sorry, there's a question if you want to have a look at in the Q&A. You might ask full screen.
So what's the question?
Okay, I'll read it out. It's by Mr. George Partasidis. Is there any particular reason why the electricity interconnection between Cyprus and Greece is not discussed? For example, is there there is a project, Eurasia Interconnector, that is in process?
So yeah, if you go back to slide, yeah, 1 more, or 2 more maybe even. There you go. So Cyprus then is to the east of this map. So the actual interconnected, the part of that interconnector which is between Crete and Cyprus isn't in itself close to any of the technology mix areas, but the entirety of that connection going all the way to mainland Greece is part of the projects that we've been looking at when it comes to the technology mix area in the southern part of the Aegean Sea. So it has been looked at on the same level as the other projects in which are geographically close to the technology mix areas. I don't know if that was an answer to the question. Okay, thank you. I apologize for this map. This map should obviously have covered the entirety of the Mediterranean Sea. It was cut short for some reason.
Okay, so let's move back very briefly to the barriers. So as I mentioned, we have identified about 10 categories of barriers on different levels, from high-level policy to regulatory to, maybe, let me put it this way, a bit slower cooperation activities in the region compared to the North Sea, for example. But do not fear, most of the categories and most of the barriers that we have identified, they are unfortunately also applicable in other sea basins in Europe, the North Sea, the Baltic Sea. So, so the list looks long, but it reflects the overall perspective on offshore energy developments. And of course, where applicable, they apply to the Mediterranean Sea in a way. As mentioned, I indicated only some of the 4 most important categories, the categories that have the major impact on the policy on offshore energy developments, we think. And of course, if you have a minute and reach out to our report, which will soon be published by the Commission, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, then the list is complete. But it's not the core, because the core of the work was to find measures that will eliminate the barriers. And this is how we get to the key recommendations. So maybe to sum up the findings of the study. First of all, we think that there is a lot of economic potential in the whole of the region, and there's more than it is already applied within the national energy and climate plans by the member states. So we think that the level of ambition could be higher. And this is also what we try to prove with our ambitious scenario. These technologies are often, these applications are often cost effective. Of course, this is a high level study and we can never repeat it enough. This is a high level study, so it requires follow-up work and more detailed work on the national level. But we think there is a lot of economic potential that could be exploited all over the region. With with having looked at the potential, as mentioned, we have picked up the 10 technology mix areas where we think they could be most attractive. And out of the 10 most attractive, we have picked 5, as you can see here, in green lines and listed on the left-hand side, where we want to recommend to the European Commission that could be pilot projects, which means that they could be given priority for further research. Again, this does not mean that there is no potential, for example, in Cyprus or in southern Greek islands, not at all. It simply is more specific and requires a higher resolution of the analysis to point out the most interesting areas. So this is a follow-up which we recommend, and we know that there is a lot of work going on in Cyprus, a lot of work going on in Greece, in Malta, in Spain as well, to try to understand the most interesting offshore potentials. Yet another recommendation, or yet another finding of the study, to be more precise, was that in fact, maybe that was very high level, but that's a very important observation. Given the geography of the region, we don't see an easy opportunity to build the concept of the mesh grid in the sense of the North Sea, because the North Sea is surrounded by EU member states, while the Mediterranean region is part of the European Union in the north and part of partners countries in the south and in the east. That leads us to another conclusion. It requires stronger cooperation and looking into the entire region, not only into the member states, but also Eastern Balkans, Turkey, and Northern Africa, to look at renewable energy potentials, but also looking at interconnections and opportunities to build hubs or interconnectors meshed with connecting offshore capacities. When it comes to the barriers, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, as I had mentioned, we tried to provide a list of policy recommendations. How can the member states and how can the European Commission facilitate the process of developing all the economic potential in the region? The list is, as you can see, pretty extensive, and it goes from better understanding areas' potential, coordinated methodology developments and grid developments, which is ongoing to a significant extent already, but could be further facilitated via the market setup, financing, and eventually R&D activities aiming at exploiting what's best in the North Sea, what's best in the Mediterranean Sea. The North Sea is another area of the analysis topology. With that, I'd like to finalize. We would also like to invite you to the final conference closing the project this Thursday. If you have time, just please do register. It's free, it's online. It takes the entire afternoon, but we will also, apart from presenting the study a little bit in more detail, I think we will also have quite interesting panelists from Wind Europe, Ocean Energy, Sustainable Energy Islands Association, but also from ENSOE, from MEDREC and some MED-TSO. So we do look forward to an interesting discussion. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Isabella, for these very interesting project results. We will definitely follow up on these issues, and thank you for being part of these afternoon discussions within the MedPower. We will probably stay on, and we will probably have more to discuss later on. I see another question. And there is a short question if you would like to respond to. It's saying that I joined a bit late, I may have missed, but what's your take on nuclear energy in the future generation mix? Okay, we are talking about renewables in the Mediterranean. Okay, if you want to respond on something, please do give a quick response to this.
Yeah, I mean the whole way we set the scenarios up is in line with the national energy and climate plans as they are drawn up by the respective countries, and that includes any development for res and non-res technologies in that sense. We don't have any political standing on that, so we take into account the proposed phase out in certain countries and technology development, but we don't assume implicit in this kind of scenario building that there will be a massive new nuclear installation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for the response. Thank you again for connecting. And now I think we have time to connect and give the floor to our project officer, Mario Dionisiou from DG Energy. He is with us. He comes from the Unit C2 of the Commission. And we would like to give him the floor to give us an update of the current approach of DG Energy on energy transition issues. Mario, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Venizelos. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry. So Mario Dionisio from Unit C2, as Venizelos presented, Research, Innovation and Competitiveness Unit of DG Energy. I've tried to share the slides. If I
below you'll find a green light, share screen. Just
yes, there it is.
Use that, and then you can share your screen.
Okay. Do you see it?
Not yet.
Okay. Because I have two screens, so I don't know how to change. No, it doesn't work because I have to change the screens. Okay.
When you click the share screen button and the window opens up where you can select which either your screen or application to share. You can select PowerPoint or, for example, you've got it there, and then click on the blue share icon on the bottom right. There we go. Let's see.
Is it there now? No.
Yeah, can you put it on full screen, please?
I don't.
To start the presentation from the beginning.
Okay. Do you have it? Is it working?
Your other monitor. Let's see.
No, no, I lost the screen. Here it is.
Okay, select on the right side on which monitor to show the screen to. There's monitor principal on the right on the toolbar in the PowerPoint there.
I lost. I have two screens, so this is why maybe giving some problems.
Yes, if you can see there, just press escape to close the presentation if it's open on your second monitor.
Do you see now? No, no, I pressed escape already, but
okay. So on the right side of the toolbar, you see it says monitor principal.
No, I don't see anything else now.
On the right, move your mouse a bit to the right.
Okay. Do you want me to do you want me to present it for you?
I think we have to do like that. I get
Mario?
it back now. Let me see. Let me see if it works. If it works now, it's okay. Otherwise, take it on, Venizelos. It doesn't, huh?
No, it's still showing on the other screen. So
the screen one, screen
okay,
two.
I'll do it.
Yeah, sorry, Venizelos. Please.
I'll do it.
Put it on.
No problem. I'll do it. Do you see my screen?
I see. Well, I see. Oh, what happens now? I see my email.
I can see the screen, but it's your Outlook, your mail program. So if you can open the presentation.
Oh, you don't see it now?
I have opened it now. Do you see it? No, huh? Still no, I suppose. As usual, when things have to work, they don't work.
Mr. FTMU, do you also have two screens, two monitors?
No. Just a second. You didn't see my screen, huh?
No, we're looking at you're sharing your screen, but we're looking at your mail program. So if you can stop sharing and try it again and select PowerPoint of the list of programs that appears for you.
No, cancel. Just a second. Stop sharing. Then I'll share again. I'll share you. Do you see it now?
We should see your desktop now. Okay, PowerPoint is coming up.
Do you see it now?
Yep. Can you put it on full on presentation mode?
Okay. Do you see it?
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Venizelos. So I have to recover, go a bit faster now. We can, yes, go ahead to the next slide. Venizelos, please. So
Yes.
I'm just wanted to show which are the known now 6 Commission priorities for 2019-2024. And we see them listed here. And for what pertains the energy system and for us, the first 3 ones clearly are pertinent, no? Mainly European Green Deal, and then it fits also for the digital, because the energy is also with digital, also on the economic part, because we're dealing also with competitiveness, as it is also the name of the unit I'm working on. So to the next, Venizelos, please. The key question, as we all know, is the reduction of greenhouse gases, and all our actions are aimed mainly to this scope, to this objective. So 80%, as we well know, compared less greenhouse gases compared to 1990. And what can we do about this? If you just go to the next one, Venizelos, please. So, which are the basis of this target of 80% less greenhouse gases? This is based on clearly on the Paris Agreement of COP21, which has renewed each year, and as you know, also from the COP24 last year in Madrid, from the national energy and climate plans, and from all this, we have clearly the energy transition started, and which goes on. And for this, we have the 2 targets, the 2 timelines to 2030, and the long-term strategy to 2050. The framework clearly is for a climate and energy clean energy for the climate in the next in the coming years for Europe and for all. But this is supported by the Horizon 2020, as you know, we're getting to this, and the Horizon Europe work programs. The next, please, Venizelos. Here again. Yes, here again, we well know the 2020 targets we are in now. We're in 2020. Useless to go through them. We go to the revised, the new enhanced ones on 2030, which have been raised a bit as targets to reach. All this converging to the famous 2050 long-term strategy and long-term targets. The next, Venizelos, please. Yes. Now, how do we get to this target? There are many ways, many pathways of achieving a climate neutral European energy system or European economy. And we have a list of sectors where actions can be taken. And clearly, among these ones, tertiary, transport, residential, industry, etc., there's clearly also the power sector where we are in. energy systems and power, yeah, clearly also linked with transport if we think about electrical transport. Anyways, these are the sectors where action have to be taken to achieve the 2050 targets. The next, please, Venizelos. Now, there are building blocks on how we can achieve this target. And here we can see these 7 key elements. Briefly, the energy efficiency is the basic one, we all know. First, energy efficiency, and then we can act on other elements, such as renewables. This is well known. We're discussing about this. The mobility, with the digitalization, with smart cities, the batteries, and so on. Then the industry and circular economy. So here we have a series of elements. We're characterizing the industry which can be optimized. We can say electrification, energy efficiency, hydrogen, biomass, renewable synthetic gas, and so on. The network infrastructure, interconnections. This is a key sector. If we know, it mentions here, if we talk about infrastructure, we're meaning any kind of infrastructure. But specifically, it is mentioned here, grids, hydrogen, etc. If we think about specifically the energy system, as there were the presentations before, we're talking about interconnectors, but aiming at a more, let's say, complex and more an electrical system which enables high integration of renewable energy. We need new technologies such as HVDC, but on the next step, on the evolution of the classical CC HVDC to the new technologies, etc. But we will see that this also later. And finally, we have bioeconomy and carbon capture and storage. The research and innovation. So this is a key dimension for the energy union. So we need to achieve the low carbon transition, but we need these new technologies. Otherwise, we don't get nowhere. And then we need new elements, new technologies to implement new systems. The set plan is there to support all this development, and the national energy and climate plans are intended to set out specific objectives. Clearly, at EU level, we set objectives, but clearly all member states have to provide their own plan on how to reach their targets. And here again, it's also a representation of what is the importance of the research and innovation. This will bring member states to prepare and take advantage of the energy transition, the national energy and climate plans, and there will be a competitiveness with challenges, etc. And this will be enabled to develop strategic value chain, and then we can identify where we can exactly act to reach those objectives. And cost-effective industrial transformation, this will be also a result for that. The next, Venizelos, please. Now, what comes from the Commission, we have the Horizon 2020 work program, which is ending, well, now by the end of the year, but also with projects going on also afterwards. But in any case, the program ends this year, and clearly the Horizon Europe will start. The budget was 6 million. We can see the repartition here on this pie chart. The renewable energy sector had a high share. The next, please, Venizelos. Going to the next work program, Horizon Europe, we see the budget has increased quite substantially. So we have 100 billion from 2021 to 2027, including 3.5 billion allocated under the InvestEU fund. And we have the different sectors here. Then we will see where we are placed. So there are three pillars in the Horizon Europe structure: the science, the global challenge, and industrial competitiveness, and open innovation. We are in the pillar 2, digital industry and climate, energy, and mobility, where we have also a joint research center. And all this is going to strengthen the European research area. With sharing excellence, etc. All this will lead, Venizelos, the next one, maybe it's not seen here, yeah, will lead to, leads me to this another slide showing what is the difference of Horizon Europe, let's say, some improvement. So there's a better coordination with other union programs, including, for example, the ones listed here: Erasmus Life, for example, Digital Europe, Space Program, InvestEU, etc. There's a harmonization of funding rules, and there's coherence and complementarity, which is necessary to not do duplication, etc., among the various programs. Now, all this strategic planning, we see a step-by-step how all this process goes on, going from the top ones, going down, not going word by word, but everything is ending practically to the work programs we are discussing about. For instance, now the Horizon Europe and the related calls. We can, yes. The next one, please, Venizelos. Okay, so the calls. For instance, we are working now on the Horizon 2020 calls with many topics, big discussion with member states, with stakeholders, and so this is work ongoing. For what has happened already is the European Green Deal call, but this is belongs still with Horizon 2020. Just I give you some details about this call for the ones who are not yet aware about this call. So it is, it has two aspects. So it is, first of all, building a low carbon climate resilient future, research and innovation in support of the Green Deal. Yes. Two aspects. One is innovative land-based, and the other is offshore renewables. So two aspects: land-based and offshore. RES. It is a single stage, etc. The opening, it is opened now since 22nd of September. It will close in January on the 26th. And for the land-based, it's renewables as usual, and for offshore. There's clearly the part of renewable energy generation, and there's a part also on infrastructure. Here we have been concentrating on a high voltage direct current, and specifically in an open manner. So addressing all the technologies involved in HVDC. Well, I correct, in DC technologies, not specifying exactly HVDC, because the DC area is still so wide, and we have not specifically requested the DGC, but still we have DC technologies. Next one. Yes, indeed, that's what I was saying. We can see here a list of examples of what is requested to be demonstrated. So multi-vendor, multi-terminal HVDC, grid forming converters, diode rectifiers in HVDC, modular multi-level converters, DC circuit breakers, DC converters, DC power hub, and their control and management systems. Clearly, any of these technologies can be demonstrated. It is important for us to go ahead with the technology. This is why we need this demonstration. We see here a list of useful links for the ones of you who want to go look into these links, and you may find something interesting. With this, I think quickly I close here. Sorry for the delay, and eventually if there's some question, I can reply. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mario. I see various questions here, huh? So, no. There is a long question. Shall I read it? I didn't read it before. To all panelists. It's to all panelists. It's not to you. To all panelists. Okay. Concerning the fact that the generation from offshore RES would be highly intermittent, causing issues related to power systems, balancing ability, stability, and flexibility. Did you investigate the need and some possibilities, ideas about connecting and coupling with potential future storage capacities of greater installed power, e.g. pumped hydro energy power in the European mainland? It would be also the opportunity for non-EU member states and countries exit to Mediterranean coast to be involved in these kind of projects. Additional remark, the question above has been addressed to the presentees of the previous offshore project. Yeah, it was not meant for you, Mario. If Isabel and the others are still around, they can respond probably to this question, but maybe later on. Okay, we already have Frank on, he can respond, but Mario, if you want to say something on this question, please go ahead.
Just one small thing. Clearly, with having all this intermittent energy in the work program, it is clear that also storage is foreseen. There are calls for storage because it is an important part also of the development of the energy system.
Yeah, and adding to that, it has been an implicit part of our assumptions in the project and in the scenarios that we analyzed. However, we did not focus on varying certain parameters and focusing on the results, how much energy storage would actually be able to contribute to balance certain issues. That's not a part of the analysis. It's integrating these amount of offshore and identifying certain grid options. That is the main part of the analysis. But clearly, in any power system of the future, you will have a huge need for flexibility that is from the grid, from production resources, from demand response, and from energy storage and all kinds. So it's going to be a complex mixture of measures that need to be taken care of.
And this is also what we also recommended for further research. So apart from understanding the demand side flexibility onshore and need for storage onshore to take care of the variability of renewable energy sources, which of course it's for offshore wind, it's lower offshore than onshore, mind you. But we also did recommend that the broad analysis of all alternative storage potentials should be considered, including hydrogen generation. So it's one of the recommendations of the study. We unfortunately didn't look into this, but it will be a very interesting next research, I think.
Okay, one question, last question. Is your reports all public? Can we have access to the final reports that you have produced through this project?
It will be published pretty soon. So we sent the final report to the Commission last week and hope that it will be published in the next 2 weeks. And I'm happy to share the link to the publication with you. But it's just in the process, so it's okay. Going to be public, but it's not.
Thank you very much. Please send it, and we will make sure that we will share it with all the participants to the conference.
Thank you so much. I will do.
We'll do that. Thank you very much all for this afternoon. Thank you, Mario, for your intervention. And we are allowed to have 10 minutes break now. And can we have everybody back 5 minutes to, well, we have different times, but 3 o'clock, 5 minutes to 3 o'clock Central European time. If you can make it, please do be back, because we have very interesting roundtable discussions for this afternoon from the